All right, we're back with Clash of Cultures as we continue our 2023 college football preview. Today, we're going to talk about the Nebraska Cornhuskers. But before we get into the football, like always, we want to thank you guys for the support and love you've given us. If you're on this video now and you haven't already, please press the like button and the subscribe button. We appreciate all the love that we've gotten. Man, numbers have been through the roof, and we love you guys for it. Please comment below. The comment section is really your chance to engage. Let us know what you think about this video. Let us know what you agree with, disagree with, and let us know what video you'd like to see next. But before we go any further, got to kick it over to Steven and ask, what's your thoughts on Nebraska this year?
Okay, so my dad knows I've been wanting to do this video for like a week now. I don't know why. I have no connection to
Is it because of Alex?
Not because of Alex. Obviously, people viewing, you guys don't know who Alex is. He's one of my childhood best friends. He's a big Nebraska fan. He graduated from Nebraska. He's been telling me he wants to do this video with us, but the timing didn't really line up. But so we're gonna go ahead and knock it out today. I think Nebraska is gonna take a giant leap this year. And now let me explain a little bit. So obviously they hired Matt Rhule.
I need you to quantify giant leap, and I'm just.
So when I say giant leap, not only are they going to be bowl eligible, they're going to be in the Big Ten title game.
Bowl eligible. Well, so in the West, that's bowl eligible is 6 wins.
So we'll get to the end.
The winner of the West rep in the Big Ten title game won 7 games last year?
They're going to win more than 7 games. We'll get to that towards the end of the video. But again, we'll just to kind of pull up the slideshow. We're going to do this one a little bit differently, guys. Just to make it a little bit more organized, and that way we can kind of break it down. So as you guys can see, this is the 2022 Nebraska game results. I believe they finished 4-8, 4-7, 4-8. So they weren't bowl eligible last year. So 4-8. I have them being supremely better than that this year. ESPN has them as the number 52 team coming into the season. I would say that's pretty fair coming off a 4-8 season. Projected win-loss 6-6. We'll get into the schedule later on. But the reason why I think they're going to make a giant leap, I think Matt Rhule is a top 10 to 15 coach in college football. That might be a hot take.
He's a very good coach.
Yeah, but that may be a little bit of a hot take. But obviously he went to the NFL for a little bit, didn't really pan out. Came back to the college level where he had major success at Baylor. Mm-hmm. His first year at Baylor, I want to say they were either 0-12 or 1-11 when he got there. And then in 2 years he was 10-4, I believe, or 11-3 or something along those lines. Had good recruiting classes there. Obviously was competing for Big 12 championships there. Almost made the playoffs, I believe, one of those years. So I think when you're looking at Nebraska and kind of a blue blood program and the history behind them, and I think when you get a top 10 to 15 coach, like I said, it's going to elevate not only the players you currently have. They brought in crazy transfers, which we'll get into in a second. The recruiting class was really good this year, which we'll get into in a second. So I really think that this year could be make or break for Nebraska. I think if they have another bad season, I wouldn't say Rhule gets fired because he just got hired there. But when I mean make or break, if he has a 10-2 type year, 9-3 type year, Nebraska could be back. And that's crazy to think that Nebraska could really be a threat in the playoff, world. But we're expanding to 12 teams here soon. So before we get into the next slide, I'll kind of kick it to you. What do you think about Nebraska, and what is your expectation before we talk about the actual roster and stuff like that?
Yeah. So what I will say is I think the Mark Rhule take is spot on.
Matt Rhule.
Oh, I'm sorry, Matt Rhule.
Yeah, the comment section will get on you about that. They pick up any little thing, man.
But I think the Matt Rhule take is spot on. Obviously, he was able to turn Baylor around. I do have concerns about the roster. We'll talk about them here shortly. But I do think they're going to be better than the 4-8. And I know you've seen where I kind of project them. I do expect them to be what I would say substantially better. Not necessarily at the level of competing for Big Ten championship. But I think you'll see improvement, and not necessarily because of the roster, but just because of better coaching.
Definitely. So I'll go ahead and get started on. So this next slide obviously shows you a bunch of stuff having to do with their roster. So we'll talk about the key losses first. Trey Palmer, obviously, big loss after he
Yeah,
transferred over from
1,000-yard receiver.
after he transferred over from LSU. He was a Big Ten newcomer of the year, 9 touchdowns. I know he went to the NFL. I cannot put my finger on what team he's on now. I think he might be on the Ravens.
He is on the Buccaneers.
Okay, so he's on the Bucs. Casey Thompson obviously transferred, but then you bring in a guy like Jeff Sims in the transfer portal from Georgia Tech, former starter over in Georgia Tech in the ACC. You lost Ernest Hausman, Jaden Gold, and Travis Vokalek. Vokalek got drafted as well. I forget what team he went to, but he got drafted as well. I think the other 3 guys transferred out. But
Vokalek went to the Ravens.
Okay, so he went to the Ravens. That's why I had confused. But I mean, when you look at the transfer portal additions, like I said, you got Jeff Sims, who is going to be their starter. Casey Thompson didn't have a great year last year, so Jeff Sims is going to be the starter. You bring in Eric Gilbert, who I don't think a lot of people know this, but he was the number 1 tight end in the country in the 2020 class, and he was a number 6 overall player in the class. So I'm kind of curious of why he left Georgia, especially, I mean, obviously you have Brock Bowers there, so I see that, but I mean, they had Darnell Washington. They ran a 2 tight end set, so I don't know why he would leave them.
I thought Gilbert initially was at LSU, right?
Yes.
And then he transferred from LSU to Georgia, and now
Correct.
he's transferring from Georgia. Well, and I think it is exactly what you said. Brock Bowers is there, and he's still there. I don't think Georgia runs a bunch of 2 tight end sets, and I don't think they have a bunch of plays designed for the second tight end.
Okay. I mean, I would see that, but like I said, nonetheless, former 5-star, number 1 overall tight end, number 6 player in the class of 2020. You bring in MJ Sherman, number 2 linebacker, number 18 player in the class of 2020. Jacob Hood, Elijah Judy, former 4-star ESPN 300 recruit. So all of these guys they're quality players. These are I mean, 3 players who have national championship experience. You have Jeff Sims of Georgia Tech, who's I believe he started for 2 years with Georgia Tech. Obviously, it's a different offense than what Nebraska's going to run, but I think Matt Rhule, I mean, he's going to groom him into a decent quarterback in the Big Ten. And then you have the other returning guys in Luke Reimer, Isaac Gifford, Marcus Washington, Ty Robinson, Marquise Buford, Malcolm Hartzog. But like as you look at this screen, outside of recruiting, we'll get into recruiting in a bit. Like what kind of stands out to you the most?
Well, let me. I'm going to kind of take one from each category. So I think the Trey Palmer loss is going to be big. I think he was the best player on the offense. Again, a 71 catch, 1,000-yard receiver. So I think that's going to be big. Casey Thompson transferring out. Again, I think just kind of like you said, that's going to be offset by Jeff Sims coming in. Going to additions, 3 players from Georgia. Who probably didn't get fully the burn they wanted, want a opportunity to highlight their own skills. But they've been in that Kirby Smart system. And again, we probably are talking about, at least in the last 2 years, one of the best college defenses, at least in the conversation of all time. So the fact that they were around that level of talent, that probably just ups Nebraska's defense, their toughness, and their ability. And then when you look at returners, right, some quality players. Again, Nebraska's been down, but I think Coach Rhule has some things to work with. I don't necessarily think they're ready to take that majorly. But again, I think there's some talent to work with. This is Nebraska, and I think when you kind of go back, and I don't want to say they're a blue blood. Nebraska's been down really since the 90s, but this is a school with some championships. They have some name recognition. I think they're going to continue to be able to, and, as you kind of look at the recruiting, 5 4-stars, I think they're going to continue to be able to pull players. So Coach Rhule is going to quickly turn this thing around, and I think he's going to take a big step this season.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of brought up the recruiting for a bit. I mean, you have a top 25 class in his first season there, coming off a 4-8 year. That's really crazy. I mean, they're the 4th ranked class in the Big Ten out of 14 teams. That's major. I would assume the only 3 teams are behind is Michigan, Penn State, and Ohio State. If I had to guess, I mean, I didn't do my research on that portion, but I would assume that's the team they're behind. But I mean, like I said, I think if they have a big season this year, those numbers are just going to inflate even higher. 5 4-stars could go to 10 4-stars or 8, and just kind of a snowball effect. And I think Matt Rhule is going to turn this around quick, like you said. But kind of getting into the turning it around quick, I'll go first. So this is my kind of projection in the middle of the screen you guys are seeing. My dad's is on the right.
Oh,
so I have the floor for Nebraska at 6-6. The ceiling I feel is at 11-1. And my final projection or prediction for Nebraska is I think they're going to go 10-2 this year. My thought process behind this was I think Matt Rhule is a great coach. I think he has enough talent and skill on the roster to where he can win half of these games just based on his coaching. I think Minnesota, Colorado, Northern Illinois, and La Tech, I think he wins all of those games fairly easy. I think Minnesota might be a tough game as an away game. I think he loses the Michigan game. That's a pretty obvious one to say. He loses that game. I mean, Michigan's probably the favorite to win the national championship behind Georgia. Then you got at Illinois. That's a trap game, but I would favor Nebraska as well. Northwestern, Purdue, Michigan State, Maryland. And then I think they're going to drop a game at the end. And I think Wisconsin, with it being an away game, is the game they're going to drop. So my prediction is 10-2. That could be far-fetched. Again, I think of all the floor and ceilings we've done so far in these 22 videos, this might be my widest margin. And we're talking about 5 games of a swing in floor and ceiling. But I think that's realistic, just because really the only team on this schedule that I can say they do not have a chance against is Michigan. I think they have a chance against every other team. And that's why I would say the ceiling's at 11-1.
Yeah, I think there's a lot we haven't seen here. And that kind of tempers my thoughts on where they are. Again, I think they're going to take a jump. And there were games that I picked for Nebraska just because of Coach Rhule. I went back and forth on that Illinois game. And I'll tell you, and obviously you all know I'm a big Deion Sanders fan, but I went back and forth on that Colorado game. I went back and forth on the Iowa game. So when you look at my floor is genuinely what games do I think they can lose, right? Like, I don't think they're going to lose the La Tech game. I don't think they're going to lose the Northwestern. I feel pretty good about them against Purdue. I think they could drop the Minnesota game again, and taking my heart out of it, taking the fan out of it. I feel pretty good against them against Colorado. While I think they're going to be better, I think they're still down talent a little bit. I don't think they're necessarily. I don't like the receiving core. Like I said, Marcus Washington, 400-yard receiver last year. So I'm not fully in love with the receiving core. I like the running backs. We'll see what Jeff Sims is, especially in the Big 12. So
Big
there's
10.
still, Big 10. There's still a lot of questions out there. Again, I am giving them 8-4, just based on Coach Rhule. I am not necessarily in love to the point where I'm ready to say 10-2.
So I will say this: I gave a lot of benefit of the doubt to Matt Rhule. Now, again, I think if they were playing tougher opponents, I wouldn't be doing this. But I think this is we've talked about before, like a cupcake schedule. I think this is a cupcake schedule. This isn't Nebraska isn't the powerhouse that it used to be, but I think, like I said, there's only one game on this schedule where I can say, like, I am 95% sure they're not going to win.
Well, and I think that goes to the disparity between the Big Ten West and the Big Ten East, right?
Yes.
I think the powerhouse teams in the Big Ten are all in the East. Because Nebraska's in the West, they only have to play one of those teams.
And I will say this: I think regardless if they go 10-2 or 8-4, I still think that's a chance at the Big Ten title game.
Yeah. The West is down. Let me say this: I think Matt Rhule coming in at 8-4 for a team that just as we saw was 4-8 last year. I think that's a major leap forward. And that could signify the beginning of Nebraska starting to dig its way back into some level of being back relevant.